Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Skillshare. So if you're watching this the week it comes out, I'll actually be busy moving across the country. Hopefully I'll be like halfway there when I post this, not really sure. So yeah, the timing maybe wasn't great for me, but I knew I didn't want to miss out on talking some Marvel Phase 4. We had some pretty huge announcements recently, some pretty expected and others more of a surprise. But one that I really wanted to focus on this week is the sequel to Doctor Strange. So I may take a little heat for this, but honestly, I was not a huge fan of the original movie. Sure, it's got its moments. I like some of the VFX sequences and the really creative final battle, but overall I think it's pretty low tier MCU, with some flat characters and maybe the worst jokes in any MCU movie. So of all the big announcements, why focus on this one? Why not like Blade or Thor? Well, honestly, mostly because of that title. I mean, just look at that thing. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I really love that title. It's over dramatic and bold in all the right ways. And I think the name alone conjures up a lot of possibilities. So I thought it'd be fun to throw together a few ideas of what I'd like to see, and maybe make a couple suggestions in how the second Doctor Strange could really set itself apart from the first.
And take him into our domain.
Now it's up to Stephen Strange to take the place of the Earth's last sorcerer.
So there's been two big pieces of news that have come out about this movie so far. The first is that it's going to be a lot more horror focused this time around, and the second is that it's apparently going to tie into Marvel's WandaVision show in some way. It's hard to say much about that second part yet, so let's really focus on the horror. In a lot of ways, this move does make a ton of sense. For one thing, director Scott Derrickson is really known for his horror movies. He's made two I really like, in Sinister and The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Now, I'm not saying he always hits it out of the park. 2014's Deliver Us from Evil was pretty terrible. You probably don't remember it, and if you do, it's probably because it featured Community's Joel McHale as a tough New York cop for some reason. But you know what, I'm gonna focus on the good stuff, because I actually do love Sinister. So Derrickson inserting some of that into the MCU does make sense. The question really becomes how much will they embrace that? We already know it's going to stick with a PG-13 rating, which actually doesn't bother me too much because I think a good Doctor Strange horror movie should be more psychological than like outright gory anyway, and they can get away with a lot of that without having to be an R. But I'm a little bit more worried about the tone. Star Benedict Cumberbatch has said that the movie will retain the humor of the first film and add horror to it, and I gotta say, that would not be my first choice. Unlike Waititi or the Russos, Scott Derrickson does not have a comedy background, and Cumberbatch can be funny in certain contexts, but I don't think comedy is a big strength for him like it is for Chris Hemsworth or Paul Rudd. And sadly, I think that's all pretty clear in the first movie, which, in my opinion, misses far more often than it hits when it comes to the punchlines. What I'd love to see is a massive change in tone, something like what Ragnarok did after Thor 2, but in a very different direction. That movie really utilized all of its director's strengths, coming straight from his comedic indie background, and I think Derrickson should try to do the same with his horror background. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be any humor in the movie at all, but I do think this is one instance where the MCU's love of undercutting stuff with jokes should probably not be used too much. If you want to sell this as a horror movie, make sure the audience really feels those stakes.
I don't know who you are or how you did that, but thanks!
Another thing that really excites me about the title is those last two words, of madness. If you're a big horror fan like me, that probably called to mind one writer, H.P. Lovecraft, who wrote the classic At the Mountains of Madness and inspired John Carpenter's great film In the Mouth of Madness. That was pretty exciting to me. I mean, my third video ever posted to this channel was about H.P. Lovecraft. I even own like this giant annotated edition of his work, and believe me, that was a massive pain in the ass to pack yesterday. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in the idea of Lovecraft's work being tapped into for a Doctor Strange story. And not just because I really like him, I honestly think the themes and ideas in his mythos would mesh together really well in a Doctor Strange movie, like they actually already have in the comics. Lovecraft was a big fan of dreamscapes. People tend to talk about Call of Cthulhu the most, but Lovecraft's deep dives into the weird honestly got a lot more surreal than that. It would be great if the film could work in ideas from his lesser known Dream Cycle, which includes some very trippy stories like the dream quest of unknown Kadath. I don't really mean plot-wise though, I mean in terms of imagery and how it combines dreamscapes with Lovecraft's ancient monstrous gods. Tapping into that, even a little, I think could go a long way into making this sequel stand out among the MCU crowd, far more than the original ever did. And Stephen Strange has a perfect villain for this story, Shumagorath, a monstrous ruler of dozens of other dimensions, whose power to manipulate reality could really justify all sorts of weird multiverse stuff. The first movie has some very memorable VFX scenes, and that's probably one of the best things it has going for it. And I'd love it if they really took this opportunity to just lean into that way more, to embrace what made this sequence so fun in the first film, and make something a lot more unsettling and weird than what you're likely to see in any other Marvel project.
This modern hospital may seem worlds apart from the days of ancient sorcerers, but for psychiatrist Stephen Strange and his beautiful patient,
in the end, what I want more than anything is a movie that learns from some of the shortcomings of the first film and takes a much bolder approach. Something that changes the MCU color palette in the way that Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy has, but a very different flavor of that, by incorporating a lot of that Lovecraft aesthetic, which is already in many old Doctor Strange comics. They might be able to create something really memorable. And I want them to pull it off because I do think the character is one of Marvel's most underrated. His early Ditko comics are just so otherworldly, and it would be great to see his movies do the same. So unlike Stephen Strange, you probably can't afford to go halfway around the world and learn magic. I mean, maybe you can, I don't know your life, but I sure can't. But if you're looking for some self-improvement a little closer to home, you gotta check out Discovering Success, 7 exercises to uncover your purpose, passion, and path on Skillshare. It's a great course that helps you create goals based on your own personal definition of success, and then helps you work towards those goals. And it's taught by author and podcaster Emma Gannett, and that's just what can get you started on Skillshare. Whether it's marketing, writing, entrepreneurship, or even just picking up a fun hobby, you'll find a course for you, because Skillshare has over 25,000 classes to pick from. So click on the link in the description below and get 2 months of access to all those classes absolutely free. Get started today by going to skl.sh/CaptainMidnight19. That's skl.sh/CaptainMidnight19.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.